Hey guys, and welcome back once more. So today I wanted to take some time to introduce a member of the Swim Inspire team who does a lot of the hard work behind the scenes. I constantly give him, a pretty tough time, and we've become a bit of a team over the last couple of years. I want to bring in a good friend and somebody who indirectly actually has inspired some Inspire, believe it or not, to come out and produce some content and also to launch this new business. So without further ado, please welcome Carlton Brunton from Brunton Media. Carlton, how are you, mate?
I'm very well. How are you, my friend?
Never better, as you know.
Love it. So, thank you for having me on. It's very weird to actually be on a podcast instead of just sitting listening to you talk, which is the which is the normal recording of this. So, yeah, what's happening? Why did you start Summit Inspire in the first place? Let's start with that. I think that's a good starting point.
Do you know what? It's always the simplest questions that are the hardest to answer sometimes, isn't it? Look, I mean, you know, as I've sort of, as we've been talking for a while about this. For me, having grown up in a working class family, having had the opportunity that I have had to then push forward with, you know, the ability to lead, I think, in many ways, and that's one of the things that when I was sort of growing up through business, there was a lack of leadership around me. So for me to then having self-taught a lot of things and having picked up pieces from other influential people in my life, I was able to piece together a theory that I felt could be applied in a practical life scenario for a lot of people and really help them almost eradicate a lot of the mistakes that I made when I was going through, my journey of business. And I'm still going through that, by the way, as well. So, as you very well know, sometimes me and you have these conversations and things don't always go to plan. So, you're never really in business and out after a few years. You're in and you're in for the long haul, right? So for me, it was just about giving something back, helping people who have dreams to turn them into some sort of reality, because as I have probably mentioned before, only 8% of us actually go on to actually even try to achieve our dreams. So I wanted to give that back, and I wanted to help people just get business ideas off the ground because there is so much potential, Colin, as you very well know, how many people we constantly come across. A little bit like yourself, when I met you, you were just shooting for fun, and now you're shooting, and you're a brand ambassador, or a brand kind of consultant for a lot of businesses. So it just shows that there is potential within everybody, and Some Inspire comes in to unleash that potential within people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I completely agree, and I think there's a lot of merit in building businesses, building side hustles, building something else that isn't your 9 to 5 now more than ever. Specifically,
Mm, mm.
for those who don't know, what is my, I guess, my role? What do I do? What's my, as someone who helps with the brand and that side. What firstly, like, number one, what do I do? Number two, how is it different to previously that we've done? Right, what we've done previously. Those who have followed from then.
Definitely, man. I mean, I assume you know what you do, but obviously, I'll for the convenience of our public and our audience, I'll definitely let them know. So, Carlton Brunton, or Brunton Media rather, um, is a brand consultant. Carlton helps businesses with branding. He mentors a lot of startups as well into almost prompting thoughts that the startup already has for himself or herself. So along with that, Carlton, obviously, Brunton Media, it's rather, I keep saying Carlton because it is Carlton, but Brunton Media rather, works behind the scenes to create a lot of the content with the videography skills as well. And, our journey's been quite funny, hasn't it? Really, let's be honest. I mean, we started off through an introduction from a mutual friend. we shot some content based a lot around fashion at the time, wasn't it? I think, Carlton.
Yeah. Our
And
first shoot was you were having a photo shoot with your photographer, and then I
that's right.
I tagged along to do behind the scenes. That then became more. And then as we did more, we did some interview stuff. Then as we did more, you sort of became more of a business. It started off as fashion, but then it became more business orientated and more entrepreneurial and more motivational and those kind of elements. From what I can see.
But that's the
Um,
crazy thing, isn't it, about
yeah,
life? I mean, this is exactly the point of Swim Inspire. You can have one thought one day, and you could be going down a certain channel, and then those channels can prompt further thoughts, which then take you into another direction. But I think all in all, that whole circle we've done has connected to bring us to where we are now, where there was a launch of a new business. Brunton Media has made strides as well since then. And you look back and people talk a lot about, wasted time, and I wasted my time doing that, or I shouldn't have done this, I should have done that. Actually, what people don't realize is that what you've collectively done almost creates that DNA for what you're trying to produce today. So where you are now, it's not just something, you took a decision on yesterday, and that's what contributed to it. It's obviously a collection of things and your thought process and your behaviors and your actions over the years which bring you to where you are now. So, you know when I never say I wasted any time, because I always look back and I think everything that I've done has contributed to me starting something that I am today, to me being where I am in life today, to me for me to be enjoying my life the most that I ever have, today. It's a contribution of all of the past um, factors taken into perspective, and I'm sure it's pretty much the same for you as well.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think for me right now, it's a very trying time for a lot of businesses, and I think for me, the first lockdown. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again here briefly. The first lockdown for me, I was like, oh, okay, I don't make any money if I can't go outside. How exciting. Right. So how do I fix this problem? And what it allowed me to do is develop different revenue streams and develop, and look at the things I was doing anyway and going, well, can I break these out into other services that I can offer, or is there other ways, or are there things that I can really focus in on getting better at, which then became, then I worked a lot more and I was doing a lot more branding work and, working with businesses on their branding and helping them with logo design and, etc. And, helping them with the consulting aspects. And as you mentioned, talking about those thoughts or I think growing those thoughts and necessarily because I don't like to put seeds in people's heads for ideas, but I like to help them flourish into trees or into flowers, so to speak. I mean, the question I had while you were previously explaining was, do you think that our previous relationship has, what role do you think that plays now in what we're doing now? I mean, I think the question that some audience members would have potentially would be, does it allow us? I mean, what jumps to mind to me was allow us is to move a lot quicker than say someone else. So, for example, we had never met before and we started working on this project together. But we had never worked together before this. Do you think it would have been a slower kind of, because it feels like we've hit the ground running with this personally?
Definitely. I mean, so a couple of points from that would be, I think the fact that in business you've got to work with others who have a very similar kind of viewpoint as you. And by that I don't mean they have to have the same opinion as you, but you've got to be working with people who are ethical for a start. Because some of the most wasted partnerships are those where you end up going to business with someone who doesn't see eye to eye with you, or doesn't see the potential of what you're trying to achieve. So I think having had Brunton Media around, we've always had a very honest conversation on things. Very rarely do we actually agree on how we want to produce content, but that from a business point of view is a positive thing, because it means we get a bunch of ideas, we throw in the mixer, and we don't just take anything out of that mixer. We pick the best possible solution out of that, and we create the content that we do. So that holds higher value than somebody who's going to bring, you know, potentially, let's say, they may well be more experienced, or they may well be, you know, having produced tons of content before. But the point is, you have to be comfortable working with people that you can have an honest conversation around. There's an element of trust around. There's ethics based around that relationship. And also, there's a great degree of respect, regardless of opinion. And I think that's one of the things that I found over the years is, it's not always about working with the best or the strongest or the most reputable brand out there, because that brand, just because it's reputable, doesn't mean it's going to be the right one for you, if you know what I mean. um, so for me, it was a case of, here's some potential I see in somebody, and I think he would be well suited to the Swim Inspire brand, and obviously hence why Brunton Media was brought into the fold, and and here we are, creating more and more content now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know you wanted to mention in this podcast about the pandemic specifically. So let's move on to that briefly. But I think for me it's interesting to see, when we look back at what we've done and what we're planning to do, how we've been able, or how I've been able, how you've been able to pivot one's business, a business, the business, whatever, because of the pandemic, because of COVID. I've already mentioned in this podcast alone that I revisited my revenue streams, back in March last year. But what did you do from a, maybe not necessarily Inspire perspective, but in general, what did the pandemic show you, if anything? What advice could you give people who are like, I actually genuinely think I'm going to go out of business, and I'm really scared and I don't know what to do?
Look, I mean, let's start with what I did, and this might tie into why I feel it's important for people to do what I will suggest going forward. So one of the things that I realized when, you know, as I have mentioned previously, so I'm in the catering and hospitality sector. I'm also in the property investment sector. So for me, these are two of the hardest hit industries, because all of a sudden hospitality had government directives to close overnight. We with property investment, all of a sudden, tenants were no longer obliged to pay rent or managed to obtain deferrals. So all of a sudden, I found myself in a situation where I had to do a lot of thinking, and I had to do it very, very fast. So one of the things that I came to know, and I came to know very, very quickly, was that I needed to have a closer and a more personal touch with numbers. So I needed to know what was where, I needed to know what was financing what, I needed to know what was costing what, and I needed to know how I was going to pay for what. And this might well sound like, is that not daily life? But you'd be so surprised at how many of us don't actually pay any sort of attention to the numbers around us every single day. Our expenditure, for a start, we don't look at how we can save. We don't look at, the buying power that a company possibly has, and what sort of pressure, or sort of, almost like a kind of alternative to purchasing. So for me, that was the first thing I controlled. I controlled a lot of the expenditure of the company. I looked at what we needed to do to cut costs, and believe it or not, the last thing that we did was cut wages. We are a company who still has not made a single employee redundant, and that is because we are a company that runs on ethics, and our employees are like our family to us. And so one of the things that we said, although these are tough times, the last thing we're going to do is get rid of people. That is the very last solution. So the first thing we did was we number crunched a lot. We made a lot of savings on our buying. We had to make some amendments to our outgoings. And these are the first things that everybody should be looking to do when you come across a situation like this. It's not about, I need to downscale my business. No, your business just needs to keep going. You need to downscale costs. And we've seen the pandemic showed us we can do that. We can have people work away from the office. That's a cost of electricity you're saving. That's a cost of a building you're almost saving if people can work from home. Technology's shown us we can do that. We can probably get more longevity out of our staff if they have the comfort of working from their home, where they no longer have to pay, nursery fees for their children, or no longer have to pay for nannies to look after, their kids. You know, all of a sudden that job that was paying 1,500, 1,600 pounds a month is now actually giving you more because you're saving even more costs by not having to outlay that cost in the first place. So this was our entire philosophy around the changes that we made, that we want to give our staff an even better life. Can you believe that? A lot of people were getting rid of staff left, right, center. We said we want to actually give our staff an even better incentive and move forward. So it really is about that sort of saying, you if you give, the more you give, the more you get. And we constantly give to our staff, and we constantly have given to our investors over the years, and hence why we're in a position where we were able to control and stem that sort of downward spiral.
There are, I'm sure, going to be lots of business owners that are in a position now where they really have to think, am I going to be in business in a month? If they've got this far, right? There will also be a percentage of business owners, unfortunately, who have gone out of business, right? Last year during first lockdown,
Sure.
second lockdown, because of economic problems or whatever. Whatever the reason is, right? It's the reality of the fact is businesses are going under every single day now, right? That's a common occurrence, unfortunately. People are
Yeah.
losing their jobs, unfortunately. So for those people who are losing their jobs, who are losing their businesses, who are losing their livelihoods, and they're scared, they don't know what to do. What would you recommend they do? And of course, everything said here is advice. It's not a golden
Of course.
chalice of you do this, this, and this, and you'll be a millionaire tomorrow. No, because that's not the way the world works. But if you could give some advice to those people, for those who are listening here now, what advice would you give?
Look, I mean, out of adversity comes success. And a lot of people will be listening to that and thinking, what the hell is he talking about? But when your back's up against the wall, you'd be so surprised at what you can produce. You'd be so surprised at how much more resilient you become. You'd be so surprised at the things that you would do to, stop yourself from crumbling. And this is an opportunity, guys. I don't look at the whole COVID thing. God bless all those who've lost their lives, 101%, yes. And I feel for those who are facing possible redundancies at work, or have already been made redundant. That's not a great situation to be in. But what does that teach you about life? That you can never be comfortable in one situation. You've got to be working on a plan B. And if you don't have a plan B, start creating it now. Because if you've got multiple sources of income, by that, I do not mean £100,000 a day. I'm not talking about that as a multiple source. If you've got that, then great. What I mean is little things, even 100, £150 a week, £200 a week, 400, 500, whatever it is that your needs. People are not loyal to their jobs. People are loyal to their needs. So once the need is no longer being fulfilled, they no longer are loyal to their jobs. And in a similar way, employers are very much the same. Employers have needs. If they are not being met, then they are not loyal to their employees. And I think this is where everybody has to really come to that realization that you need to constantly be working on a plan B. And if you haven't done so, COVID should be an example of why you should constantly have a plan B, because we don't really know where the economy is going to go. We have experts sitting there who advise us, but even they don't really know where it's going to go, because you can never foresee the future, right? And I think this is the prime example of, you know, cut your expenditure. And, I'll talk to you about people's weight, for example, right? The amount of people that I saw lose weight in COVID, who I've known for 20, 30 years, who've been the same weight, and all of a sudden during COVID, they lost weight. Why? Number one, they were locked down constantly with the fear that they were going to lose their jobs. Number two, they were so stagnant in life, they felt like, that rat race of, work to home, home to work is no longer there. So what do I do with my life? So all of a sudden, with their backs against the wall, they decided to take good care of their health. So they thought, well, I can't sit here piling on weight and feeling sorry for myself. I need to do something. So the first call of point was to work on health. And all of a sudden, people who have never lost weight for 20 years came out of lockdown looking absolutely trim. And it just shows when your mind is right, when you are thinking practically opposed to with a constant tired mind, and you're doing the same things on repeat every day but expecting different results. I mean, that is the pure definition of stupidity, if you ask me. You know, if you earn £1,500 a month and your expenditure is £1,500 a month and you save nothing and you get to the end of the month and you think, oh God, I wish I'd saved some money. But you do the same thing for the next 7 years of your life without even trying to do something about it. And that's the crazy thing. I'm not expecting everyone to try something and it works. But when people don't even try to change their lives, they really don't have an excuse for finding themselves in a situation. You can blame the pandemic, you can blame the government, you can blame, whoever it is, your employer for it or whatever. But put yourselves in their shoes. What would you do if you were them? And people come up with the most ridiculous things. I will never have got rid of my staff. Yes, you would have if you were facing deficits. You would definitely be getting rid of your staff. And the problem is not the fact that the employers have turned bad, it's the fact that you do not have a plan B. And I think that's where everyone needs to be. And that's where Swim Inspire again comes in. It's just helping people build a plan B. Your plan B could have just been your dream, but you don't know the length and the extent that your dream can take you to. It might become your plan A or your plan A plus for all you know, but
Yeah,
you'll
yeah.
never know unless you try.
And also, just to jump in here, like it's not always necessarily I need to start a new business. Like for example, moving back to my lockdown example, I had my main source of revenues was creating video content, right? That was my main source for the first 2 years, 3 years. And I was like, well, okay, I can't do that, so I need now to make within the company. I need to find other sources of revenue. That means I can offer different services, which means I can have a different client base or offer more to my clients, which means I can still make money even if we're in a lockdown. That was the main thing, right, for me.
Mm.
But also, when people say, oh, you need a plan B or you need other sources of revenue, what they don't necessarily think about is if you have 5 clients who are all paying you separate things to do separate things, that is 5 different streams of revenue. It's not just because you get money from clients, that's one stream of revenue. No, it's not. It's actually 5 because you're not reliant on one client. The issue, and I remember a business coach at a networking meeting a couple of years ago said to me, if you look at your what you make a month or what you make a year, whatever, and one client or one customer is more than, I think it was like 10 or 13% or something like that, then you've got a problem. Because what if that client or customer disappears tomorrow, right? And that's why I and anyone who is in a business or anyone who does anything like that needs to have multiple different clients. And that's why I think it's sometimes very challenging for people because they like the security of I go to work, I start at 9, I finish at 5, I can then chill out, right? That's fine if you want that life, that's fine, but you also need to be aware that that could end tomorrow. And whenever I had a job like that, because everyone has had that at some point, you have to, because you have to make money, right? But I knew that phone could ring and I could be gone like
Absolutely.
that tomorrow, right? So
Absolutely.
I went, okay, that's not in my control. I'm going to make sure if that phone rings tomorrow, I'm not screwed by creating what then was going to become Brunter Media, which then has become more and more and more, and now has become, even more than I originally thought, and even more than I originally planned. So, I think the main moral of the story there is absolutely have a plan B. But even if it's £5, right, extra coming in from something else, or I don't want to get too much investment here as well, but if you have the ability and you have been able to save money, how are you utilizing that money? and I'll throw it back to you here on property investing, for example. That's a way of investing. There is others, of course, and I think it's also about if you're in a position, say for example, you've been made redundant, you have a redundancy package, but you actually have another job lined up, or you etc. Right, or you're gonna have another. Okay, then instead of just blowing that money on a new car, a new watch, a new ring, whatever, how are you going to utilize that money so it gives you a safety net in the future?
Definitely. And I mean, in extension to sort of what you said, I picked up a couple of points there. But, just to give you a prime example, when the first lockdown was announced in March 2020, within the space of 2 months, my first company lost, up to half a million in less than one quarter. And I remember at that point, having spoken to a lot of people in my industry, because just to get a flavor of, was it just us that was experiencing this, or was it actually across the board? And I remember speaking to business owners who were experiencing more or less the same thing as us. And I could not believe when some of them were, instead of trying to find creative ways to do stuff, they just accepted it for what it was and decided, there's no point in me going in because it's until this wave's over. And I look back and I think that's such a bad attitude to have and such a negative attitude to have, because since the COVID outbreak, my input into my business has actually become twofold, almost double to what it was before. There's times, and this is one thing people need to understand, we never glorify business. Business is not, I wake up at 12 p.m. and I'm done by 3 p.m.
Yeah, business is hard. Business is like 12,
It's
14-hour
hard.
days, right? Business is, you think you don't want to work on the weekends, you'll work 15 hours on the weekend.
You'll work
You know,
double. You'll work double. And the thing is, when you're in a situation like COVID, I found myself working. Not necessarily, I'm not saying I was physically working or, I was packing parcels or anything like that for 16 hours a day, but my brain was engaged for 12 to 16 hours a day. And I mean, out of that, I've probably come up with 2 good ideas. But it just shows you how many ideas you can come up with. But out of that, quantity is the quality you're looking for. And, one was Swim Inspire, obviously, which I have launched. And, we've been pondering that for some time. But due to certain personal situations in life, that was unable to get off the ground quicker. But the idea was there and I knew I wanted it. And, the other idea was around adapting my businesses. How was I going to adapt them? And, making that adaptation. And you have to put in the grind. It's as simple as that. And I look at it now and people think, oh, well, what's the point of being a business if you're going to do 12, 16 hours a day? The crazy thing is, you're not going to do your 12, 16 hours a day for the rest of your life in business. That's just not physically possible. And if you are, then you're not doing something right, if that's what it is. But my 12 to 16 hours that I do now compared to that I used to do 10 years ago are very, very different. And I do less in these 12 to 16 hours that I do now, but I produce more, because that is the art of learning to manage your time properly.
yeah, it's one of those things where, and I sorry to interrupt, but it was one of those things I was just thinking, like, it's about working smart and a lot and hard,
Yes.
right? It's not just
Absolutely.
about, I'm going to do 15 hours and then I'm going to make X, Y. Because if you're doing 15 hours and you're still, if you're paid an hourly rate of whatever it is, you're still only going to make that hourly rate. You need to find a way to increase your hourly income task. So whatever the task is or whatever the job is or whatever you're doing, you need to increase per hour what you make, and then have some extra time to then continue to build the business after the fact as well. That's
Definitely.
why we work so hard.
And absolutely, and you'll know all about that. End of the day, you're a business owner, but it really rubs me up the wrong way when people say things like, you need to stop working hard and work smart. And it annoys me, because I disagree. You need to work smarter, but not smart, and stop working hard. You need to work a little bit less harder and more smarter, I agree with. But there's no such thing as you need to stop working hard and work smart, because if you think about it, let's say you're in a manufacturing business. If you've never manufactured something yourself, how are you going to teach someone else how to do it in the future? And what accountability will you have if tomorrow your business goes south and you're having to manufacture yourself physically? If you don't know how to do it, how are you going to teach it? Does that make sense? It's like me, saying to you, Carlton, I really want to learn how to shoot videos. But Carlton, let's say, if he didn't know how to shoot videos, how is he going to possibly teach me? And this ties in with a lot of people when they launch a business, or they've got an idea, they go and speak to their uncle, their auntie, or their second cousin who is selling drugs by the corner store about it, and they turn around and they tell them, oh, it's a rubbish idea, or it's never going to work, or people laugh at you, and you get put off by other people's opinions, and those people have never achieved anything in their lives themselves. They've never gone and even tried to do something different. So how can you possibly value their opinion on something you're trying to achieve? It's just not possible. When you came to me, Carlton, and you told me this is what you wanted to do, my first, even though I had no knowledge on the line of business you're in, but I encouraged you straight away, because I know what it takes to want to turn that dream into reality. And that is a long and painful process. And one of the first things is, you look for other people's approval. And that's the crazy thing. We look for approval from people who've never gone out and actually achieved anything in that field themselves. And if we speak to people who have run businesses or have done things in the past, they will never put you off the idea. They'll definitely maybe amend things or tell you to change your vision slightly or ask you to do it in a certain way, but they will never tell you this is not for you. Because every true businessman, every real businessman knows that everything is born from a dream. And you can never do something for life that you haven't enjoyed. You can never get as much out of something if you don't enjoy it. Like, you have to enjoy what you do. And it's about turning that passion into reality. And I think that's one of the things that stood out for me about you, was the fact that you packed in your job at the time, which was your only source of income at that time, to pursue your dream. And the first thing I remember thinking was, wow, that takes guts. Because to be like, I don't need this income anymore, or rather I do, but I'm not going to take this income anymore, because this is what I want to do, and I believe that I can do this. And that takes a lot of guts. And I look around and I think so many people have that backing financially to even try, but they never will, because they're so scared that they're going to fail. But people don't realize that from failure, success is born. You can't be successful without failing. Now, Carlton, if you had not got your first rejection when you were pitching your business, how would you have got the business you have today?
I mean, the thing, it's funny because I have this conversation all the time, and it's one of these things where it's like, I still now get told, no, don't want to know about that. You're too expensive. No, you're too this. You're too that. No, you're not this. You're not that. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Do what you got to do, or etc. And the thing is, for me, the more you get rejected, the more you, I guess, don't care about it as much. You're just like, okay, next. Okay, cool, next. Okay, cool, next. And the thing is, like, you either want it or you don't. Like, and just to give some context for those who don't know, who aren't coming from my page or etc. I went full time literally a month before COVID hit. Right, it was like a calendar month basically on the dot. I was like, oh cool, nice, oh great, that's great. And then we went straight into lockdown basically like 2-3 weeks after that. So it was like fabulous, okay, fabulous, great. Just went full time, just took this leap of faith and punch in the gut. Right, okay, well, what am I gonna do now? So it's one of those things where it's like, and I asked myself, because I had obviously run Brandon Media along the side of my old job year before that, and I was like, well, what did I do at the very, very beginning when I had absolutely no one and no one knew who my name was? I just sent email after email after email, phone call after phone call after phone call, so on, until
Absolutely.
I was sick of it, and my mindset was one more, do one more, do one more, do one more, every time. And the same with videos, the same with learning, the same with doing this, or the same with learning podcasting, or now offering podcasting or consulting or whatever. It was like, okay, you want to do X, do it then. Fail, do it again. Fail, do it again. Fail, do it again. Eventually, you'll stop failing. Eventually, you'll be like, actually, I'm quite good at this. And I actually know how to sell it, right? It's the same as sales. Like, a lot of people say to me, oh, how do you sell video? How do you sell your service? There's no work in this city, or there's no work around, or no one's buying right now, or no one's spending money right now. Well, clearly, as the fact we're having this conversation, and we both have bills to pay, people are. You know, so I think it's one of those things where, again, if you hadn't failed at selling and failed, and you know, I'll throw it back to you in a sec, but you wouldn't know how to sell now. Have you, you know, at the start, did you know how to sell your product? Did you know how to sell your service?
Not.
Were you handed this golden, here you go, this is what you do, and this is how you sell it?
Like I said, you know, I don't think I'd sold anything in my life when I started business. And I think sometimes I spend a lot of time trying very hard to sell things. And the more you do that, then the more desperate you become, if you know what I mean. And all of a sudden, you're not yourself. And if you're not yourself, then people are not buying into you. And I always say people buy into you as much as they do into your service. And, you know, 90% of, I'm not as active as I was, I guess, into client acquisition now as I was a few years back. But if I look at the bulk of the clients that I brought to the company that were from myself, 80 to 90% of those clients that came in for those services actually brought into me as a person. They knew, here's Sumit, he will deliver, he's promised me this, so I will get this. And I think I had to learn that the hard way as well, because, you know, I never missold anything in my life, but there was times where I promised something, and for one factor or another, I was unable to deliver. And, you know, you find that once that starts to happen constant, people lose faith in you. And once people lose faith in you, it's very hard to get that back. So, you know, I look at, I remember last year signing the biggest deal for our company. And when I went to that meeting, I remember very clearly. So it was the procurement manager for the company was there, the head of buying also, who worked in line with procurement, was there, and one of the operations managers for that project was there. And I remember, you know, being asked about the service and just to kind of fill everybody in the room, which I did. So the first thing my client said was, there is a very important relationship here, which is a contributing factor to this deal. And I remember procurement saying to me, they said, Sumit, your company is coming in at least 10 to 15% more expensive than other companies that we have had come through this tender process. And the very first thing I said in response to that was that those 10 to 15% margins that you talk about, you're never going to get those margins from those companies, because I know the factor that I bring to that role, to that business deal, is the fact that I will personally be working with a lot of my clients. And my client here, I remember saying at the time, my client here knows that what they will get from me. And I remember at the end of that meeting, you know, having left, and you always have second thoughts, right? And I thought whether that was the right thing to do. And a week later, when that contract was signed and sold, I remember having the conversation with my client again, and he said to me, he goes, you are 10 to 15% more expensive, but there is no way we will get that kind of service anywhere else. And I mean, that is the whole thing about people buying into you, as if not, you know, as much as your service, but more into you as a person. And that comes with experience, and it comes with growth, and it comes with a lot of rejection, which people are not willing to go through. And you know, I think I look back at that and I think, have my 10 to 11 years in business been smooth? And hell no, they haven't. You know, even tomorrow's probably going to be another rocky day. But the fact of the matter is, you learn to build a bridge and you get over it. But if you're not even willing to make your way to the bridge to start building it, then no one can actually force you there. And you can't expect to cross that bridge if you're going to constantly just visualize the bridge being there but do nothing about it. Do you know what I mean? You have to put that graft in. You have to graft, and I still graft today, and there's nothing embarrassing about that. But when it's your own, it tastes that much better.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's why I mean I was gonna. I mean, for me, I'm interested as well, but I think there might be value in it. So that's why I'm asking it. You know, flipping it round to our relationship. Why did you choose Brandon Media to do this outside of you knew me, right? We had worked together before, but like I would arguably say, and I'm probably more expensive for what I offer than most people. To be honest, I probably am if I really go just on price, right? I probably am. Why choose me? Because I'm sure you looked around and you've told me you looked around before. Why choose me?
Um, it's a good question. I think, like I said, just a little while back, that a lot of it is to do with relationships at the end of the day, and about having that kind of core structure around me, that I know, this is my network. I can rely on this network to produce X, Y, and Z. Obviously, that doesn't stop me from exploring other opportunities, but you know, you look at what you get and the quality of what you get, but you also look at how flexible is the person. You look at if tomorrow I was unable to do this, what would my relationship be with that person? You look at what can this person deliver for me? If I didn't like the delivery and I wanted it a certain way, how would the person react? And if you can't answer all those questions positively, then that person isn't the right one for you to work with. And that's always been, the motto when I've gone about looking for suppliers, when I've gone about looking for tenders, is always looking at what ethically works. And I think, we've had that relationship and we continue to do so where, there isn't that issue as such. And, we continue to make strides.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree, and I think that's why it's interesting. I think that's why people, I think if they're going to take anything from this, need to ask themselves what they want. Number one, but number two, how they're going to get from A to B, and as an initial, like an ending point here, because I'm aware of time. What would be your final thoughts on, say, for example, someone knows what they want to get to B, but they're at A, but they don't know how to go in the middle. They don't know the middle bit, right? How can you do that, or where how could one do that?
Look, I mean, if you want to take your business to the next level and you've never been to that level yourself before, you need to find someone who can take you to that level. And that can only be achieved if you actually spend time, you know, rubbing shoulders with people who earn that kind of income, who sort of operate on that capacity. And one of the things that I've always been for is mentors. And a mentor doesn't have to be someone who charges you thousands of pounds. I mean, a mentor could be somebody, you could have that in your family, or you could look to find someone who has achieved those things and have a working relationship with them. And investment is very important in your own future, and it's not always just time investment. Sometimes you have to invest money to produce more money. We can't just expect to have everything for free. So I think it's so important that you invest in a mentor from a very young sort of relative time in your business, because that will always keep your business in check, and your mentor will always push you. And that's one of the things that I do with my clients at Swim Inspire, is I'm always pushing my clients, because I know that there is more they can do. Even when they think they're doing a lot, I push them for more, because if I tell them to go and achieve 100%, they'll come back and achieve 75. But if I tell them to achieve only 50%, they're only going to produce 25%. Does that make sense? And that's the role of a mentor. You always push and push and push your client so they achieve even if half of that, and they'll be making massive strides. So I think it's so important, even when you're your own director, your own boss, you need someone there who's going to push you, and that's where mentors come in. And so thank you to all, of course, for tuning in. So thank you for believing in me. Always very blessed that I have the best around me. So thank you for all your motivation over the years. And also, look out for new content. Swim Inspire is going to bring a hell of a lot of experience into this field of helping startup businesses, getting thoughts and dreams and general business ideas off the ground. You need tactics and you need strength and you need some sort of direction when doing that. So I'm going to be looking to introduce services which help you bring that dream into reality. So thank you once again for tuning in, and we'll catch up soon.